Welcome to Class 2 of Overcoming Career Constraints, What College Doesn't Teach You. Today, we are going to talk about the idea of emotional substitution, why we like to substitute certain emotions for others. And then we're going to talk about how to apply your thoughts and your emotions, because believe it or not, they serve a very important purpose in life. And we want to be able to maximize our thoughts and our emotions for the better. All right, so let's get moving and take a look at a quick review from last week. Last week was Class 1, and what we talked about last week were different reasons why you are held back in the workplace. Number one, what I taught you was your brain was designed to fulfill the motivational triad. That means your brain wants to seek pleasure, and it wants to avoid pain, and it wants to be efficient. It wants to do things the lazy way, so to speak. Now, your brain was designed to do that. But what that means is that if you have specific beliefs or thoughts that you have thought for many, many years, or if you have specific beliefs that you believe really, really hard, it will be more difficult to change those beliefs. It's not impossible, but it would be a little bit more difficult. Number two, we talked about beliefs versus facts. And what I wanted you to take away from that is the idea that we are bombarded by so many thoughts all day long. And sometimes we take them at face value, and sometimes we don't take a step back and say, wait a second, what am I thinking here and why? Is this the truth? So what I want you to start thinking about doing is questioning your beliefs and questioning your thoughts and actually asking yourself, is this just a belief I'm telling myself, or is this actually a fact in the world? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more today. We talked about self-limiting beliefs and how they build strong neural pathways. And what I taught you is that every time you have a specific thought or belief, a specific neural pathway is stimulated in your brain. The more you think it, the more it's stimulated, and the easier it is for your brain to keep thinking that. We also talked about how a lack of self-confidence holds most people back in the workplace. Module 2 will definitely target lack of self-confidence. We're not quite ready to talk about that yet. So the big takeaway from last week is that this class is going to make the use of the term neuroplasticity, which simply means taking certain thoughts and beliefs and changing them for the better to give you better results in life. I'm going to help you understand what some of your current beliefs are, whether or not they're helping you, and if you decide they're not, how to move forward and change them. So that's very important when it comes to this course, because what I want you to take away after the 12 classes are done with is that you're going to have a stronger sense of yourself. You're going to have a stronger internal foundation so that you can go out there and create amazing external experiences for yourself. So neuroplasticity works best if you understand how to differentiate situations from beliefs. In other words, thoughts from facts, or fact from fiction. So we're going to get into that today. Here is a quick outline. We're going to talk about separating fact from fiction. In section B, we're going to talk about emotional substitution, what that might look like for you and how that affects your life. And that will lead us to section C. I will introduce you to what is called the STEER energetic framework. That's where we take thoughts and feelings and put everything together so that it makes sense for you. I put a picture of a steering wheel on this slide specifically because I'm going to help you tonight take more control over your life. We do have much more control than we think. And tonight I'm going to teach you a couple tools here to help you steer that wheel in a better direction. Now let's get started by talking about separating facts from fictions. And this slide we saw last week. What I taught you is that situations around you, which are also called facts, are objective and they are external to you. And of course, by objective, what that means is that there is no opinion inserted into a fact or a truth. So for example, last week, I talked about how the news, once you look at it or watch it, the fact is that that's what they're reporting on the news. It doesn't mean what they're reporting is true, but what's true is that they are reporting something very specific that you're taking in. Other people in your life, the things that they say, the things that they do, those are also external situations. Other people, believe it or not, are objective. They exist in the world. They're not good or bad. They're just there. Your job, that is a situation external to you. The pandemic is a situation external to you. And this is important because when you can distinguish situations external from you versus a belief, then you can take more control. And what I mean by that is sometimes we live our lives as though we're trying to control the world around us. As much as we want to, we try to control, let's say, other people, or we try to control the pandemic, or a whole list of other things that are meaningful to us. And what I want you to realize is that sometimes if you're trying to change things that are not within your control, it can drive you crazy. Now, beliefs, which I also refer to as fiction, are subjective. So beliefs include your own opinions. They reside inside your brain, and they include your perceptions of situations and of other people. Your beliefs include your thoughts, your interpretations, your narratives, or your self-talk. So there is a big distinction between the top of the slide, which is situations or facts, versus the bottom of the slide, which includes your beliefs or fiction. So try to get good at distinguishing between fact and fiction in your everyday life. Why do we want to do this? We want to do this because, number one, when we realize what facts actually are in the world, we come to understand that we cannot change those facts. And that's really important. Sometimes we try to change the world around us, or we try to change the facts because we want to feel better, because we feel like we're doing something good. But as I said a few moments ago, the more you try to change things that are outside of your control, the more out of control you're going to feel. So let's not waste energy trying to change things outside of our control. That's the reason, number one, why we want to separate fact from fiction. The second reason we want to do that is because fiction, or our beliefs, are things that we can change. That's what we actually have control over. Those are the things that we can change. You see, we get to choose our thoughts and our beliefs. We get to choose them. Beliefs, thoughts, and perceptions are optional. They are up to you, and you do get to take ownership over those. Facts, you cannot. So that's a second great reason to be able to distinguish fact from fiction. The takeaway from section A is that the purpose of our thoughts and beliefs is to generate emotion. Now, in this course, I use the terms emotion and feelings synonymously. So if you hear me say feeling, I mean emotion. Those are the same things. So we have thoughts and interpretations and beliefs. And what those do for us in our lives, the purpose they serve, they generate energy or emotions, feelings inside of us. That leads us to the next section, emotional substitution. I have the word indulgence here. in quotes. Emotional substitution, as you can guess, means switching out one emotion for another. That's all it is. Now, there are many different ways that we can do that, and I've listed some of those ways here in the table. What I want you to know is that these are only some examples of the ways people will resist their emotions. They might react to their emotions. They may ignore them. Sometimes people hope that emotions will just go away. And so we're very good sometimes at distracting ourselves from emotions that make us feel terrible because we don't like the way it feels. We can put any action in this table. It doesn't have to be something that is listed here. These are simply examples of different ways people will try to avoid emotions or resist their emotions. And what I want you to take away from this slide is that it's not the action itself. Just because somebody is gambling, that doesn't mean they're trying to run away from their emotions. But I want you to remember it's the intent behind the action. What is the energy behind what you're doing? You could over clean. You could be so obsessed with cleaning your house, and that could be a way of avoiding emotions. That could be a way of emotional substitution. The question is not the action, but what's the intent behind the action? So the result here, what I've written at the bottom, is that when we substitute emotions, it does offer temporary relief because we get to get away from that terrible emotion for a little while. But the problem is that that is not a permanent solution. Emotions do not just disappear. They don't just subside and never come back. They don't just wear off, and they don't just move on as much as we would like them to sometimes. When we avoid or resist or ignore, emotions come right back, and they come back stronger. So listen, you would never take this Band-Aid and put it on a broken arm, right? You want to fix the problem at the root. That's the same thing with our emotions. We don't want to put Band-Aids on our emotions just because they don't feel good. They will come back and haunt us. So why do we substitute emotions? Why do we do this? Well, we probably have not been taught during our lives that emotions, number one, are simply physiological arrangements of body tissues inside of our body. That's literally what emotions are. It is an arrangement of tissues inside of you at any given moment. Emotions or feelings are harmless. They cannot hurt you. They cannot kill you. As terrible as some of them may feel, they won't hurt you. And we've not been taught that many of our emotions, not all of them, but many of our emotions are generated by what we're thinking inside of our brains. Nobody, most likely, has sat us down and taught us this. This is really good information to know, and I wish somebody would have told me this a long time ago. So very easy to substitute emotions out. I want you to know, as terrible as they may seem, they're not going to kill you. They're not going to hurt you. Something else to know about emotions. They are not universal. They are not universally expressed or recognized among the world, even among people in the same society. Just because somebody cries doesn't mean they're sad or upset, right? Emotions are not hardwired. They are not predetermined, and they are not uncontrollable. I have here in the middle of a slide a link to this great TED Talk, and it's called "You Aren't at the Mercy of Your Emotions." The TED Talk is done by one of my favorite neuroscientists. Her name is Lisa Feldman Barrett. And in this talk, if you're interested in watching it, she says, emotions are not built into your brain, they're just built. So that's really good to know. And at the bottom of the slide, what I want you to understand is that our emotions serve a big purpose in our lives. They fuel our actions. They drive our behaviors. That's really good to know. Again, I'm assuming nobody has ever taught you this, but in the next section, we're going to put all of this together. All right. So what we have learned so far is what this picture shows right here. I have taught you, number one, how to differentiate thoughts from situations, fact from fiction. And the purpose of doing that is to understand what it is you're thinking, what's going on in your brain, okay, so that you can assess whether or not it's working for you in your life. And if it's not, then you can change it. And the other reason to differentiate fact from fiction is because now you know that your thoughts and beliefs generate energy inside of you. So what this picture says is thoughts create your feelings, feelings create your behavior or your actions, and then your behavior and actions, all they do is reinforce your thinking. This is cognitive science here. On the next slide, we're going to take it to the next level. I'm going to introduce you to what is called the STEER energetic framework. This puts your thoughts and feelings and actions all together. We start at the top with S. S represents situations. Those are outside of you, and they're not good or bad. They're just situations. They're just the facts. Those situations that we are bombarded with on a daily basis lead our brains to think thoughts and beliefs. Thoughts generate our energy or our emotions. Our emotions fuel our actions and behaviors. And at the end of the day, when you take a look at all of your actions and behaviors, that produces your reality. So the takeaway here is that your thoughts propagate your own reality. And the reason why is because of this STEER energetic framework. I'm going to run through 2 demonstrations in the next couple of slides, and I am going to walk you through how this framework actually shows up in your life. So in the first example, I'm going to propose a situation to you, and then I'm going to pick a random thought that you might have about that situation, and then I'll show you how the rest of it plays out to create a reality for you. So let's say, for example, the situation is that your boss at work says you're not getting a raise this year. Now, there are many different ways you could interpret that. And that situation, again, is not good or bad. Those are words somebody else said. That's external to you. You get to make it mean whatever you want. In this case, you're going to go away and you're going to think to yourself, they don't value my work. They must not like me. They don't appreciate all the things I do, and on and on and on. So let's take this thought. They don't value my work. If you truly believe that, it's probably going to give you an energy that makes you feel depleted. Perhaps you might feel insignificant. Perhaps your self-confidence would go down. There are many other ways that you could feel based on this thought. Now, based on that energy that you're feeling, which is depleted and insignificant, take a look at some of these actions here that you might follow through on. You might ruminate on that thought. You might complain to your colleagues or to your family. You might doubt yourself and start questioning yourself and your work. You might work harder so you can prove yourself to your boss. You might go to another job. You might quit your job without having another one lined up. So those are actions that you might take as a result of feeling depleted and insignificant. Now, the reality here at the end of the day, when you take a look at these actions that you would most likely engage in as a result of that energy, the reality is that you're not valuing your own work. You are so caught up in this belief, they don't value my work, that you're going out and doing all of these counterproductive actions and you're not valuing yourself and what you bring to the table. You're forgetting what you bring to the table. So the takeaway here is that the energy, depleted and insignificant in this case, is not a result of the boss saying, there's no raise for you this year. Your energy is a result of the thought, they don't value my work. That's really important to know. On the next slide, we're going to keep the same situation. I'm going to offer you a different thought. Another belief you could have about this situation, you could tell yourself, you know what? They don't recognize my worth, but I do. From that belief, the energy it's going to give you is you're probably going to feel grounded. You're probably going to be confident. You're probably going to feel like you can go out and conquer whatever obstacle comes your way. Based on this kind of energy, the actions you might take are, you're not going to go to work and try harder. You're not going to have to prove yourself because there's nothing to prove. You're not going to look for another job. You're not going to doubt yourself. You are going to concern yourself with your own personal growth and what else you can do to grow professionally or personally. Based on those actions, the reality at the end of the day is that you're reinforcing your own self-confidence and your own self-worth. Based on the thought, they may not recognize my worth, but I do. There's an arrow that goes from the thought all the way down to reality. So this STEER framework shows you how your thought produces this particular reality. The wonderful thing about this is that it's the same situation. The situation did not change, and that's a good thing because we can't change it anyway, but we can choose our thought. Okay, example 2, next. We have a new situation. Situation 2 is that your boss or your management comes to you and they are requesting overtime. They're demanding it, they're asking it. It could look many different ways, but they want you to put in overtime. Here is one thought that you could have about that. I better comply. I might be the next one they lay off. From that thought, you're going to probably feel obligated. You're probably going to feel anxiety. You're probably going to feel pressure and forced. From that kind of energy, what are you going to do? You're going to give your attention to the job instead of your family. You're probably going to sacrifice some sleep. You're probably going to complain to people. You're probably going to blame your employer because you feel burnt out or overwhelmed. And you might ruminate and start dreaming about other jobs. Based on all of these actions, the reality at the end of the day is that you're laying yourself off from your own life. You are so concerned about being laid off by your employer that it's forcing you to lay yourself off from your personal life, taking time away from sleep, family, and leisure time. Again, the takeaway here is that the energy, obligated and anxious, are not a result of the situation. You're not feeling obligated and anxious because they requested overtime. You're feeling it because of your thought, I better comply. I might be the next one they lay off. And again, that thought, there's an arrow going from the thought to reality. Your thought created your reality via the STEER energetic framework. Let's take a look at the same situation, different thought. You could think to yourself, whether or not I work overtime, it's my decision to own. From that belief, it's probably going to make you feel autonomous. It's probably going to make you feel like you're in control, you're in the driver's seat. And based on that energy, the actions you may take, number one, you're going to discuss it with your partner at home if you have one. Number two, you're going to consider how this overtime can be factored into your self-care routine because you take care of yourself. You might assess and ask yourself, will the results of overtime be to my benefit? Is it worth the extra money, or is it worth the extra vacation, or whatever it may be? you are confidently going to come to a decision and say, yes, I'm going to do the overtime and this is why, or you're going to tell yourself, nope, not doing it. And this is why, and that's the way it is. The reality here at the end of the day, based on your actions here, is that you are owning your decisions and you are taking ownership over your own life. And that's a beautiful way to live. We don't want to be in a place where we feel pressured or overwhelmed or burnt out or forced to work overtime. So again, the energy here, autonomy and feeling in control, that is a result of the belief, the thought. Whether or not I work overtime, it's my decision. Okay, so those are two demonstrations of how the STEER energetic framework comes into play in our lives daily. And this framework, it's a great exercise for you to do by yourself. If you have 10 minutes or so, just start filling in the lines. If you have a particular thought or a feeling that's nagging you, start filling in, put STEAR in a column and start filling it in and see what you come up with. And if you need help with that, I'm happy to walk you through. So here's a summary. This is what we talked about tonight. Number one, beliefs and thoughts can be altered. They can be changed. You do own those and you do get to choose those. Facts, you cannot change. You don't own facts. So stop trying to change them. That is wasted energy. Number two, we talked about substituting emotions. It may offer temporary relief, but in section 3, now that you understand the STEER energetic framework, you can take an emotion that's bugging you or that doesn't feel good, you can insert it into the framework and start filling in the rest of the lines. So the STEER energetic framework shows you, it's a demonstration of how our thoughts and our feelings play out in our lives. And I highly recommend a couple times a week, just sit down and fill out your own framework. Pick a thought, pick a feeling, and just go through the exercise and see how it feels to you. See what you come up with. The main conclusion tonight from class 2 is that your brain is plastic. It is adaptable. The world is not. Again, this is where neuroplasticity comes into play. We want to take ownership over our thoughts. We want to take ownership over our beliefs so that we can understand how they play in our lives and whether or not we want to change them. Okay? So that's the big takeaway. Stop trying to change the world. Instead, adapt yourself or adapt your brain to the world around you. And I have a great quote to end tonight's presentation by William Shakespeare. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so.